And then I remember my very first regular season game, week 1 of 2016, was against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. It was actually my parents, my parents came to my first game as well. And looking back on it, being in Philadelphia for their first experience at an NFL game was probably the wrong place. Because Philly fans are like
something else,
kind of the worst and the meanest. And I might have a kind of a niche opinion on this, but I feel like there's a lot of people walking around that could play a couple snaps in the NFL. It's not like I had any say in it. It's like if the NFL is offering you a job at a certain position, like
you're not gonna be like, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm gonna
do something else.
I don't know. I guess that was all just a bunch of fluff. But
that was all very.
That's my advice.
Very, very, very good stuff.
1, 2, 3.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Go With The Flow. A very, very special guest in the building. This individual, who I will introduce in a second, it's actually funny how this episode came about. I was at the Princeton Entrepreneurship Conference in the city a few weeks ago. I got there kind of late, was kind of tired, but I was like, okay, let me go do some networking. Mm-hmm. So walked up to, I think you were actually the second or third person that I talked to. And then we got to talking. You mentioned that you were a former NFL player and still working your way to get back to the NFL. And I was like, whoa, podcast, this is exactly who I'm trying to talk to and get to have on my podcast. And I asked you to come on, and you are very gracious, and you are here right now. So Seth DeValve, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love Princeton. I love Princetonians. I love podcasts. And so this was a no-brainer.
Oh, love that. Love that. And so the very first place that I want to start is you are a class of 2016. Yes. You played on the football team here, and I saw that you were a mechanical engineering major, which I very so much respect. I respect everyone's majors, but I respect the engineers that much more. Why did you decide that you wanted to go with mechanical engineering when you were here?
Yeah, it's a great question. I kind of grew up in a family of engineers. Like, if you were around our dinner table when I was growing up, we had some very interesting dinner conversations about mathematics, string theory, physics. My dad, has worked on airplanes his whole life, and we grew up building stuff. Like, we had a half pipe in our backyard that we built and paid for with a paper route, and, tree houses and trebuchets, which most people don't even know what that is, but
what's a trebuchet?
We had designed and built the trebuchet. It's like medieval siege warfare equipment.
Okay,
we would just launch bowling balls into the woods. Gotcha. It was awesome. But on top of that too, as a 16, 17-year-old kid in high school, you kind of pick a major that, based off of what subjects you enjoy in school. At least that's kind of where my head was at. I always loved math and physics. And, at the time, I didn't love reading and writing as much as I do now. If I were to go back to school, maybe I would consider more options. But at the time, I really knew that I loved and was good at math and physics and chemistry and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to kind of follow in my dad's footsteps, kind of my older brother's footsteps. And Princeton actually turned out to be one of the few places where I could realistically come and play football and study that for 4 years at the same time. Because what a lot of recruits don't know at that age is, while coaches will tell you can study whatever you want at a lot of schools, the truth is you can't. And my brother actually got into a position at a different school where he had to change his major from a science major over to a humanities major, his sophomore year, because the practice and academic time conflict. But Princeton is it's such a small undergraduate body, such a high percentage of the undergraduate population here are athletes because we have every sports team imaginable.
Yeah.
So the university here does a really good job of accommodating its student athletes. And it was one of the reasons I chose to come here was because I knew I wanted to play football. I wanted to study engineering. And this is honestly one of the few schools you can realistically do that.
Yeah. So. And it's funny because I actually read a Daily Prince article just the other day, and it was looking at the major breakdown. It was specifically by student athlete versus non-student athletes. Mm-hmm. And there was some testimonials about how some student athletes felt like some certain STEM degrees were still even a little bit too hard to attain, and so they were finding themselves dropping out. So that's just a testament to how hard not just every student athlete, but especially engineers have to work, because even with all the accommodations that exist, it's still not easy, because it's Princeton and you're working I like to say athletes have 2 full-time schedules, just being students and being athletes.
Listen, my first 2 years here, you could not find me. I rushed through the dining. I would speed eat in the dining hall. I would barely get my 8 hours of sleep, which actually was pretty good.
I was about to say, at least you got 8, yeah.
I was very good about that. That was one of the reasons I probably ended up gaining a bunch of muscle and, all that stuff. But, like, you would see me at practice, obviously. You'd see me at class most of the time. But then the rest of my day, I was in my room grinding, just trying to get homework assignments done. And honestly, I still handed in homework assignments partially done. But, like, I was able to actually do enough and learn quite well, to the point where I did well comparably to my, athlete and non-athlete classmates. So yeah.
And so the first thing that I wanted to ask you about, which is very timely, because we're in the last few weeks of the semester. I turned in my thesis last week, and we're now PTL, senior spring. Mm-hmm. Can you reflect back on your senior spring, especially the last few weeks, and just what that feeling of turning into the thesis was like for you, and just how much fun you were able to have in those last few weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a senior fall. And I won't go into too many details about why that is, because it could be a long story. But essentially, I got hurt my 4th year.
Okay.
I unenrolled from school so that I could maintain my eligibility. I came back and I did my senior spring the following fall. Oh. So I actually handed in my thesis just before Christmas, 2015, and ended up graduating June 2016. So actually, that whole spring semester of June 2016, I was not graduated, but I had no more academic requirements. Okay. So I was off campus. I was training for the NFL draft, so on and so forth. But my senior fall, I guess, I actually lived a block down from here in Henry Hall. With teammates, and we had a grand old time.
Were the parties in Henry Courtyard just as fun as they are now?
I haven't been to any parties in Henry Courtyard in quite a while, but I imagine they're similar. At the time, I don't know if kids still do this, but like we had the strobe lights lining the corner of our dorm room, like neon lights.
Oh, for sure, still exist. Yep.
So we had like very colorful themed parties, and we had a good time. We were all in Cannon, so we frequented Cannon quite a bit. I was hard at work on my thesis while other people kind of weren't. Yeah. So, but at that point, I had what I think to be the good fortune of actually, before graduating college, taking a semester off, going and getting a real job. And when I came back, I appreciated so much the college experience. And like, not everybody gets to experience that until they're done.
Yeah.
Like done. I got to come back and be like, wow, I'm freaking thankful to be here.
And it's funny because during COVID has allowed a lot of people to do that a lot more than you used to be able to. Literally saw someone in my eating club yesterday who's on a gap year, and he was saying exactly what you just said about how he's looking forward to coming back to school, which is something he never thought he would say, because he's been working for the last year also.
Yeah, because it's a grind here, especially if you're a student athlete, and sometimes people take for granted how much opportunity is here, how much community is here. The fact that Princeton guarantees housing to all its undergraduates is unheard of in the rest of the college world. Like, most people move off campus before their freshman year is even over. The amount of community that's here is crazy. And I think it's partially why reunions are so successful, because like people experience that and they miss that. And I really, by that time in my college career, I had kind of figured out the juggle of all the things on my plate and was really able to enjoy it and enjoy the company of my friends, and still hand in a good thesis and train hard, and it was a good time in my life.
We talked a little bit about the end of your Princeton career. Rewind into sort of your progression from the first to the second to the third year.
Yeah.
I was doing my research for the episode, looking at your stats and the jumps that you were able to take from freshman to sophomore year to junior year. How exactly were you able to take such wide leaps to the point where you're becoming nationally recognized?
Yeah, I was a quarterback my whole life through high school.
Okay.
Starting from fourth grade. I played a little bit of defense in high school. While I was being recruited, I was really all over the map. Some schools wanted me at different positions. When I came to the Princeton camp, they kind of liked me at every position other than like offensive and defensive line and quarterback. That was the thing. Like, I wanted to play quarterback, but Princeton was like, we want you, but you're not playing quarterback. I still give them grief about that to this day.
You can curse on here if you want.
Yeah.
Personal choice. Yeah.
anyways, I think that I was a pretty good athlete at the time, but it was a little bit untapped because I was standing in the pocket throwing passes.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I had within me from like just a pure expression of athleticism standpoint. Because one of the things I loved about the transition to wide receiver actually was like, dang, I get to just like use the full extent of my athleticism here. Whereas like you could be a great athlete, stand in the pocket, and just miss your throw.
Yeah.
And be considered a bad quarterback. You know what I mean? Whereas like as a wide receiver, man, you could still have a lot of work to do and still get by in just athleticism. You know what I mean? That being said, though, I think in terms of just making jumps from year to year, I was always very focused, very short term. And I think that's one of the messages I want to get across to like young athletes, college athletes, especially in an era of NIL. Like, so many people I talk to are so focused like 5-10 years out on like where they want to be. I never had that mentality. I didn't come to Princeton thinking I was going to play in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, I came to Princeton because I wanted to play college football.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get a great education, and I wanted to have a great career someday. You know what I mean? But my personality has always been like very driven and wanting to be the best as I possibly can at what's right in front of me. So like my jumps from year to year were I was just trying to be the best second year receiver I could be, best third year receiver I could be, the best in the weight room at that given week. You know what I mean? I didn't start thinking about the NFL until scouts started coming to practice. And even then, I had to actually talk to the scouts to make sure they were legit. You know what I mean? Like,
are you actually here for me?
Yeah, exactly. No, I know. I just wanted to compete with the guys around me and be the best at where I was. That's how I was in high school. That's how I was in college. I didn't have this dream of playing in the NFL since I was 5 years old. Like you hear a lot of kids talking about. Like, I did dream about that, but it wasn't like that's why I was getting up to work.
Yeah.
I was getting up to work because I wanted to win against my peers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that I encourage people to kind of adopt that mindset because you can't control
the future
5-10 years from now. Like, there's a lot of variability and uncertainty that goes into achieving something like that. And most of us who have achieved that have gotten lucky on a couple of those things. You know what I mean? You just don't know. So like, just focus on the present. That can be advice for a lot of things, but particularly athletes. Like, don't get too far ahead of yourself. Just do the best you possibly can with what's right in front of you. And that's what I did.
And so are you saying that even at that point, when scouts started to come to see you, you kept that same short-term mentality? Or at that point, did you then extend to a little bit of, okay, maybe I should try to start planning 2 to 3 years down the line to potentially be in the NFL?
I honestly didn't even have a choice. Like, I kid you not, and this might not be the healthiest thing, but like most of my time I spent here was survival mode. Like, I didn't have any more to give athletically than I was already giving. I didn't have any more to give academically than I was already giving. So like, it was business as usual. Like, I'm trying to maintain a respectable GPA, and I'm trying to dominate on the field. And like, everything I had been doing up until that point was all I continued to do. The only thing that maybe would have changed is I started talking to agents, who start recruiting you for once your eligibility is up, because you need an agent in the NFL. And I started getting advice from them, because the truth is, what got you to be a dominant college football player isn't necessarily going to get you, that same work isn't necessarily going to get you to be a dominant pro player. There's a lot of adjustments that need to be made. So I learned a lot in the process and from various people that I had the good fortune of connecting with. But at the time, it was business as usual.
Fair enough. And looking back now, what about the Princeton football experience do you think prepared you for that next step, if it did in any way?
Yeah, well, Coach Thrace has had a lot of experience in the NFL, coaching and scouting. When you're around football at the highest level, you know what it takes to be successful. Football involves so many people. There's over 100 guys on the field. On the team.
There's 22 on the field.
Yeah. There's 22 at any given time unless there's a penalty. But there's 100 in college. There's over 100 guys on the team. There's over 20 coaches. Like, so much of success in football is logistics. If you can maximize your time, if you can maximize your practice, if you can maximize your time in the film room, if you can maximize the physical output of the individual players on your team without overtraining, like all that stuff you learn from being around football at a high level. Coach Thrace the head football coach here, has been there, and so he structured the structure of the program here is what you can expect when you go into an NFL locker room or a high level college like a BCS college locker room, and so I wasn't giving up anything by choosing to play football here in terms of level of preparation. The strength staff here is amazing. The coaches here were really great. I had a really great wide receiver coach, Dennis Goldman, while I was here, and I was a blank slate. I had never played wide receiver in my life, and he coached me from the very fundamentals of the position, and everything I knew up until that point was from him. And I think that was maybe looking back, a good thing, because, I didn't have any bad habits yet. But yeah, it's a really good program here. And when I talk to recruits, I encourage them to come here, especially if they want to be an engineer.
Yeah, good point.
But, yeah.
And honestly, that is interesting to hear. And I feel like a lot of people might be surprised to hear that if you come to an Ivy League school, to a Princeton, or Princeton specifically, which is what you were speaking to, you're not losing anything preparation-wise as compared to if you were going to whatever other school. So that is something that, again, would be a very good tool to give recruits, where they might think, okay, I'm going to get good academics here, but would I be getting the same level of training that I would? And so you're saying that that's exactly what you're able to have here.
When I was getting recruited here, there wasn't a ton of guys in my position to tell recruits that.
Yeah.
Now there's several. And I think that's, on top of that too, Ivy League football just continues to get better. I may not have been able to say that 10 years ago about Ivy League football, but it's legit now. And there's plenty of examples of guys every year going pro and from various programs, particularly Princeton. Those guys weren't around to talk to, because they didn't exist when I was getting recruited. But now it's a testament to the growth of the league over the last decade or so. But
yeah, and we mentioned the draft a little bit ago, and so the actual NFL draft for this year is actually tomorrow, so very timely conversation. Can you take me back to your draft night specifically? Going in, did you feel like you knew around where you'd be drafted, or you just went into that night hopefully, because it's multiple nights, so did you go into those period of days thinking, I just hope my name will be called at some point? What exactly was your mindset going in?
So my expectation was that I was going to be a day 3 draft pick. Basically, the way the NFL draft works is the first round is on the first day, rounds 2 and 3 are on the second day, and rounds 4 through 7 are on the third day. I watched the draft the first 2 days, but I wasn't waiting by the phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What I was doing was seeing where tight ends were picked and how that might affect where I get picked. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of a game there. I did expect to be picked somewhere on the third day. My draft day in particular was awesome. I mean, I ended up getting picked early in the day, which is great. Didn't have to sit by the TV or the phone all day. I think the people who were with me really appreciated that too, because I think it was a beautiful day. I think we wanted to get out and celebrate. Yeah. We had the opportunity to do that. I have an awesome family. They live around the country now, but it was really special to have them all home, my brothers and their families. It was an event that brought people together, almost like a wedding ish. Mm-hmm. That's hard to recreate in the future. And so it was one of those days where like I was surrounded by all my favorite people, and it was just super special. It's one of the great memories and great days of my life. It's not certainly not everything, but it was a really special day, and to be drafted early in the third day and have time to go out and celebrate with all those people was really special.
And it's so cool that you said earlier that you came into Princeton and you didn't even dream of going to the NFL, and yet you are to this day the highest Princeton football player drafted in the NFL. You're drafted 138th overall by the Browns in the fourth round. So that's just kind of funny how life works, where it's like it's the maybe the people who come here who have been dreaming about the NFL from the day they were born, they might not have been drafted, but you were just taking things a year at a time, and again, it was drafted very highly. So pretty cool. And so you were drafted by the Browns to Cleveland. And you played wide receiver in college, and then you transitioned to tight end. Did you have any say in that at all? Or were you just called into an office one day and they were like, you're a tight end now?
Yeah, I kind of knew actually before my college career was over that I was being scouted as a tight end. I mean, I was one of the heaviest wide receivers probably in football history. But I was still athletic enough, at least in the Ivy League, to continue to play wide receiver. Our offensive coordinator at the time could have moved me to tight end, but he loved having a big body wide receiver out on the edge. And quite honestly, I loved it too. But by my last year in college, like I was moving into tight end, putting my hand in the ground, doing traditional tight end things, but really only in games. I didn't practice it. I started practicing it after my college career was over, before the draft, but it's not like I had any say in it. It's like if the NFL is offering you a job at a certain position, like
you're not gonna be like, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm gonna
do something else. Yeah. And so, other than maybe that specific position change, what would you say was the hardest transition from college football to playing in the NFL?
I was just talking to somebody about this. Football is an interesting sport because there's actually, and I might have a kind of a niche opinion on this, but I feel like there's a lot of people walking around that could play a couple of snaps in the NFL. Like from just a physical output perspective. Like the same can't be said about the NBA.
Yeah.
NBA like is different from a height perspective, a skill perspective. Football is one of those sports where like if you are strong, fast, and work hard, like you can go really far. You know what I mean? To a certain extent, that was kind of who I was. And I had a really great first day of practice. And after that day, I had pulled my hamstring. And the coach, our offensive coordinator and head coach, walked up to me, up to my locker after the practice. And he was like, Seth, like, you're a good player, but you got to figure out how to stay on the field and do this every day. The NFL season is July through February, and we start playing in April to get ready, which means you're playing football for the majority of the year, every day, right? So what really makes a pro and separates pros from just the rest of the population that may look like a pro is the ability to get up and do it every day. And like the Ivy League schedule is kind of a sprint. It's a very short season. You're home by Thanksgiving. And like, it's a physical grind, but it's not the long grind of an NFL season where like you got to take care of your body. You got to learn how to be competitive at 95% and not always just at 100%. There's a lot more that goes into being able to roll out of bed and play football every day than a lot of people realize, than a lot of college football players realize. And I happen to be one of those. But, over the course of my career, I've gotten a lot better at that. And, injuries still happen. But some of the, soft tissue injuries I struggled with early on, I don't struggle with anymore. So I would say the biggest adjustment wasn't necessarily skill wise. It was how to maintain your body for that long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they do say the best ability is availability.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what you're hinting at. And I would say also, maybe that might be one thing where it might be useful or helpful for the Ivy League to maybe prep athletes for the NFL to maybe extend the season a little bit longer, the same way FBS season finishes like early January. Yeah.
Good luck with that. The Ivy League is immovable on many of those things, but that would be awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was the hardest transition. Would you say that there was a specific like in-game, like welcome to the NFL moment that you had?
Yeah. You know, the NFL preseason, I don't know how much our audience follows the NFL. I would imagine maybe a little. There's like, nowadays there's 3 preseason games before the regular season. The starters usually don't play in them. It's usually like guys who are being evaluated to see if they're going to make the roster. So like I remember my rookie preseason, I had a false sense of security because I knew I was playing against second and third stringers, but it felt like the NFL, like, you know, like the other side has a Chicago Bears helmet on. You know what I mean? Like I'm playing the Bears. You know what I mean? So I remember like feeling like, dang, I'm gonna be in this league a long time. You know what I mean? Like I can play here. And then I remember my very first regular season game, week 1 of 2016, was against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia.
I'm an Eagles fan, by the way, so go Birds.
Yeah. It was actually my parents. You know, my parents came to my first game as well. And looking back on it, being in Philadelphia for their first experience at an NFL game was probably the wrong place. Because Philly fans are like
something else.
Kind of the worst and the meanest. And yeah, we won't get into Philly fans, but my parents had some stories after that game. But anyways, like, you know, I get into the game, I feel pretty prepared, but like Brandon Graham was not playing preseason football.
No, he was not.
And we ended up losing that game. I only ended up playing, you know, a handful of snaps because I was a third tight end. I played special teams a lot at that point in my career. But I remember being like, dang, I could have prepared better. You know, like, also I could have just, I don't know, there's little tricks to the trade in the NFL, especially when it comes to preparation and studying the opponents you're going up against specifically, that I kicked myself right into gear after that game because I was like, man, this is not preseason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, these guys are for real. And I'm going to do better next time. And I did. You know, I did come back better. And, you know, maybe that's not like the like big hit moment of welcome to the NFL, but like Brandon Graham was a formidable opponent. For those of you who don't know, I don't think he's on the Eagles anymore.
Brandon,
but he was number 55, big old defensive end, one of the best in the biz at the time. And yeah, I think he won that matchup.
Yeah, why do I feel like he still is on? If not, he was last season. Maybe he isn't anymore. But
he's had a good career.
Yeah. Again, love Brandon Graham, and I will say Eagles or Philly fans are something else. I still remember I went to the parade my senior year of high school after the Super Bowl win. One of the most fun experiences ever. Just a very wild group of individuals all coming together to celebrate one thing. It was a magical time.
Yeah, you know, you being a Philly fan, you probably appreciate the fact that I got to play with Nick Foles for a season in Jacksonville.
Wow, I do appreciate that.
My wife's family are also Philly fans, and they could barely contain themselves that year.
We love Nick Foles. I'm not gonna say his nickname on here because it's
yeah. Don't say it.
A family friendly podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, but
he's a good guy.
Yeah. So for you, certain career milestone moments, first catch, first touchdown. Do you remember each of those moments vividly?
My first touchdown was my second catch.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the NFL. And it was on national television. It was on Thursday Night Football.
Yep.
Eric Weddle had me one-on-one over the middle, and I just ran past him. You know, the ball was kind of like lollipopped up there because it was man coverage, and you can do that against man coverage downfield. And I was just running under it. It was a good pass, but it like took a while to get to me.
Yeah.
I was just running under it. I was like, Seth, you got to catch this one. So if you ever pull up the footage, like I like kind of instead of like catching it with my hands, I like catch it like
On your
in my
chest.
stomach, like kind of just like I would catch a baby or something, and I just like fell to the ground and rolled into the end zone. It wasn't the most glamorous thing, but I was like, I'm gonna get 6 points.
It counts. It's
you know
6
what I mean?
points, exactly.
And next time, you know, I won't have these jitters, and I'll just catch it like a normal person. But
Was that a Baker Mayfield pass, or who was the quarterback at that time?
that was a Cody Kessler pass.
Okay.
That was pre Mayfield era.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you did play with Baker.
I did play with Baker. Yeah.
Okay.
Baker was drafted, I think, in 2018.
Okay.
Yep, and that was 2016. What was the other question? First
catch and first touchdown, but you said your second catch.
Oh,
was,
yeah. My first catch was, I think, maybe 2 weeks prior to that against the Jets. It was a special day because my brothers had come out that week to watch me play. So I got my first catch with all my brothers in the stands. That was cool.
Love that.
But, yeah, the touchdown's better.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's points on the board.
Yeah.
And so those first few years with the Browns, especially your first year, I would say, how much were you able to appreciate the fact that you were living out the dreams of millions of kids around the world and playing in the NFL?
Wow. You know, when you think about that question, I always feel like I probably could have appreciated it more. You know, the NFL is a hard business. You're always working to keep your job. You know, even when you get paid a lot of money, the expectations are higher, and you get cut if you're getting paid a lot and not producing what that pay suggests you should be producing. You know what I mean? So like, regardless of what you're getting paid in the NFL, like there's a level of expectation on you that you have to fulfill every day in order to stay there. But like, I had a ton of awesome opportunities that, yes, is living the dream. You know what I mean? Like, just getting to go back to my elementary school and middle school and high school and talk to the students and have them actually care about who I was. Like, I think everybody like desires that to a certain extent. Or just like sit on different panels with amazing people and even just be considered to speak with them. You know, and just like getting on a team bus and having a police escort everywhere we go. That was pretty great and convenient, especially you know the one place that doesn't do that?
Where?
London. When NFL teams play in London, we sit for hours in traffic getting to the airport. The only person in London who gets a police escort is the Queen.
Really?
And in America, if you're any pro team, like the cops come out and they blow through
even college teams.
They blow, even college teams. They
Like
blow
in
through all the
Alabama,
red lights. Because like football, like at that level, football is like on a very tight schedule. It's like to the minute. So it's like we're gonna arrive at this time, we're gonna leave at this time, and the cops make it happen. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's a really weird tangential story. I apologize.
No, but that's actually so. I would have never thought about it. So you're saying even I wonder if like Premier League teams like Chelsea when they're playing, if they
Yeah,
just
that's a
have
great
to
question.
go through traffic.
We sat on that bus for hours.
And I would imagine if y'all have to,
I played there
everyone-
twice.
Yeah.
And both times it was the same way. 2 different stadiums, but still a lot of traffic.
Wembley either time.
One was Wembley and one was Twickenham.
Where's Twickenham?
It's like a rugby stadium.
Okay, very random. Okay,
Yeah, but they were both really, really cool.
okay, gotcha. Well,
You know what? There's going to be some listeners that are probably going to call me out on that. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. That might be the city.
okay,
I think that's called the stadium too.
Twickenham. Well, you know what? We'll say it's right.
I'm not a big European soccer guy. My
Okay.
brother-in-law really is, and he'll probably correct me, but whatever.
Okay, fair enough. But that, again, the only Queen gets a police escort. That is my little nugget that I've learned. It's right. Theo behind the camera says it's Twickenham. Look
Let's
at that.
go. I should know.
You should.
I should know. So,
I don't even remember the question that I asked. I forgot how I got there. It was
like living the dream moment.
yes,
Like,
if you're able to appreciate it. And then what I was going to ask based on what you said you've sat on some panels with some cool people. Who have you sat on panels with?
you know, I sat on a couple like racial equity in sports panels, like with Benjamin Watson, Rashad Jennings. There's this initiative called the Raw Sports Initiative for Equality. It's called RISE that I did some work with for various times. There's some authors that I probably don't remember their names that I sat on panels with, which is it was a very humbling experiences. Usually I listened more than I spoke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? but yeah, just able to do work in the community and, you know, just be a part of conversations, you know, that are important. But that, you know, that was and continues to be something I love doing. So.
Yeah. And so you were on the Browns for a few years, then you spent a little bit of time in the Jaguars, Panthers, Cardinals, some of that time as a practice squad player.
Yeah.
How, because again, even as someone who follows the NFL very closely, you always hear like practice squad this, practice squad that. What exactly is the life of a practice squad player like? And can you just describe the level of uncertainty, whether it's being activated to the game day roster and then not? Just what is the life of a practice squad player like?
Yeah, it can get unnecessarily complex, so I'll try to keep it simple. But an active player, meaning you're on the 53-man roster, you work, you know, Monday through Sunday. A practice squad player really only works on the practice days. So like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You're not taking game reps. You could be called up for a game if there's various injuries or whatever. Like you are definitely a part of the team. Like you practice more than anybody, and everybody knows who you are. Like you're definitely part of the team. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you have a locker?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're 100% part of the team, and you prepare for games as if you're going to play because you could get called up whenever. But you're not taking the hits on Sunday. So like generally your body's in like slightly better shape. Oh, they do run you into the ground at practice because they know you're not playing on Sunday. You know what I mean? But you know, the NFL rosters are so small that even active players take reps with practice squad guys. I've done that my whole career because I've never been like the first position starter. I was a little bit my second year, but like even then, because I was a young guy, when the defense was up, I was helping giving them reps. You know what I mean? So like as a young guy in the NFL, unless you're drafted very high or very good, like you're part of the practice squad in some ways. The only thing different about actually being on the practice squad is there is some volatility roster wise. Like they may want to bring in a guy at a certain position and start him on the practice squad, and there's only so many spots, so somebody's got to go. You know what I mean? The new CBA that was signed in 2020 actually allows more players to be on the practice squad. Actually, at my level of seniority, on the old CBA, I wouldn't have even been able to be allowed to be on a practice squad. So there's some pros and cons to that. One of the pros is definitely like you can get your foot in the door sooner and start on the practice squad before being elevated to the active roster. But yeah, it's a good job. You still make some money and you still get to play football. And most of the time, practice squad players will at some point get called up and get an opportunity to play. So, yeah, it's not so bad.
Yeah, and the last time that you were on a roster was 2020?
Yeah, I guess our last game was in January 2021. But yeah, unfortunately, a knee injury has kept me away since then. I never left the game. I just never stopped getting calls. I just haven't been healthy enough to fulfill the calls, unfortunately. I'm continuing to work to reverse that and get back to my healthy ways and former self. But, you know, I guess the game takes its toll, and you got to respect your body. Otherwise, it barks back.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, I'm continuing to try to figure that out. So,
and where does the motivation for you come to keep working through all the injuries and to try to get back on the field? Because I would imagine some people might have just given up at this point, but you're still at the point where, like you just said, you've never actually stepped away from the game and you're waiting until your body's ready to get back on the field. Where does that motivation come from?
Yeah, you know, in some ways, this is new in the sense that no injury has ever taken this long. But in other ways, it's really business as usual. Because how many times can I point to in my career that I've dealt with something just like this? And I've gotten this far partially just because I've never given up. I've always worked to overcome and push through the obstacle. At some point, obviously, that ends, right? But I don't believe this is the end. I'm really young otherwise, you know what I mean? And I feel good. These things can get figured out even if they're frustrating at first.
Yeah.
So, you when the time comes to be done, I think that will be because of our family growing, God willing, or career shifts, or just a lack of love for doing it every day. But I don't think it will be getting pushed out like this. You know what I mean? So I'm just going to keep overcoming the injury setbacks the way I've done, in the past, and just keep working. Where does the motivation come from? Shoot. A lot of people would kill to be in my position.
This is true.
I get to work out every day. I get to impact people's lives, that in a way that I'm fortunate to be able to, that, maybe people won't care as much in a couple of years when I'm done. So like, it's just, it's special to get to be able to do it. And, while things may be like discouraging presently, like it's cool to get to do what I'm doing. And I acknowledge that. And, at some point that'll change, but right now I love doing it, So.
Yeah. And speaking of inspiring people, you started the Seth DeValve Foundation.
Yeah.
Could you just speak to exactly why that was something that you wanted to do and the work that you do through that foundation?
Yeah. We started it in, February 2020.
COVID.
What else happened in February 2020?
Wasn't that Kobe and the wildfires in Australia were raging? 2020 was an insane year. I always joke that when I have grandkids one day, God willing, they're gonna like call me for a project. They're gonna be like, in class we're learning about 2020.
You're gonna be the primary source.
Yeah, can you tell us about that year? Yep.
We started fundraising for the Seth DeValve Foundation right around the time where bars and restaurants were being told they had to close. So it was a very difficult time to start a foundation. We had these big, lofty goals for it. Since then, it comparatively had, more humble beginnings than what we had kind of planned, but the work is still really, really great. The work kind of centers around the high school to college transition for students and student athletes. If you can remember back to that time, depending on how many, junior, senior in high school, maybe even a little younger, depending on how many mentors you had, figuring out how to apply to college, how to get recruited if you're an athlete by colleges, that is a Pandora's box that kids at that age know nothing about. And most of their parents know very little about it too, at least where I'm from. So I had the good fortune of having 3 older brothers that had done the process before me. And honestly, a lot of my success has been the result of having the right information at the right time in order to execute it, right? Like, I had an older brother who could have played here, football, but he got started too late because he didn't know. You know what I mean? You can't get recruited after your senior year of high school football. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, the Seth DeValve Foundation exists to give students the right information at the right time so that they can really execute their goals. It's really that simple. We do seminars. We intended to have camps, recruiting camps that have remained virtual. And by virtual, I mean virtual seminars. But we disseminate a lot of information about academics, college academic requirements, college application processes, recruiting processes for various